Now, the stage is set for a high-octane mayoral poll in the Big Apple in a contest that has seen the America president stick his neck out in the mayoral contest. Now, Zohran Mamdani has emerged as the front-runner so far. In fact, in a post on Truth Social, US President Donald Trump warned that voters' New York City's survival is at stake should Democratic candidate Zohran Mamdani win this election. In fact, Donald Trump said here, and I quote him, "If communist candidate Zohran Mamdani wins the election for the mayor of New York City, it is highly unlikely that I will be contributing federal funds to my beloved home state. In fact, this once a great city has zero chance of success or even survival. It can only get worse with a communist at the helm." This is the latest statement we're getting in from President Trump. Now, he also added that it is my strong conviction that New York City will be a complete and total economic and social disaster should Mamdani win. His principles have been tested for over 1,000 years now, and never once have they been successful. This is the latest statement we're getting in from President Trump himself on the New York City mayor elections. Now, Mamdani responded to Donald Trump's threat with calmness, saying that what Trump said was not a law and it was time to stand up to bullies.
I will address that threat for what it is. It is a threat. It is not the law. And too often we treat everything that comes out of Donald Trump's mouth as if it is already legal just by virtue of who is saying it. And it is time to finally stand up to the bullies that make these threats, not to become the bullies ourselves. And we've seen time and time again that the best way to respond to Donald Trump and to defeat these kinds of threats is to actually stand up and fight back. You've seen leaders across this country who have shown their unwillingness to compromise on their own morals and their own values as the way in which they fight back. And too often what we found in New York City is instead a willingness to capitulate and coordinate. And all of this with the most collaborative mayor you could find for Donald Trump in New York City.
Now, viewers, clearly with the comfortable lead here in the polls, Zohran Mamdani is on the brink of creating history when New Yorkers vote on Tuesday. In fact, as the youngest mayor in over a century and also the first Muslim and South Asian leader of the city. But the question is, who is this man? Who is Zohran Mamdani? Well, let's get you more details on that. Mamdani is a Uganda-born South Asian immigrant. His mother, Meera Nair, in fact, is a celebrated film director and also a Punjabi Hindu born, raised in Odisha. Meanwhile, his father, Mahmood Mamdani, is a Gujarati Muslim who was born in Mumbai and then grew up in Uganda. Currently, he is a professor who teaches at Columbia. In fact, both of Mamdani's parents are Harvard alumni. Now, Mamdani speaks both Hindi and Urdu besides English. In fact, he was born in Kampala, Uganda and moved to New York with the family at the age of 7. Now, when we talk about his promises for this election, Mamdani has a promise to tax millionaires to pay for the expanded social programs. In fact, the 33-year-old New York State Assembly member from Queens has now focused his campaign on housing, controlling rising rents in New York City, inflation and anti-corruption measures as well. Now, viewers, he describes himself as a democratic socialist, which essentially means giving a voice to workers and not corporations. So let us go ahead and try to understand Mamdani's brand of socialism by decoding his election manifesto. What all has he promised to people, in fact? Well, Mamdani's message has kept a sharp focus on affordability and quality of life issues in New York. Let's get you more details. What has he promised? He's promised a free high-quality childcare for every child aged 6 weeks to 5 years. Further, he's also promised affordable housing with rent freeze on 1 million apartments. Apart from this, he's also promised to build about 200,000 new affordable housing units over 10 years. And further, he says that he will eliminate fares on only city buses for over 1 million daily riders. He's also talked about city-owned supermarkets in New York City. Meanwhile, promising a Department of Community Safety to handle mental health crisis and growing homelessness. In fact, he's also said that he's going to get the tuition fee waived in City University of New York system, while also raising a minimum wage to rupees $30 per hour by 2030. You see, these are all the promises that Mamdani has given out in this election. In fact, Mamdani's main rival in Tuesday's vote is a former Democratic Governor Andrew Cuomo, who's running as an independent candidate. This after he lost to Mamdani in the primaries. Cuomo accuses Mamdani here of being an anti-business agenda that would kill New York. In fact, if you talk about proposals that Mamdani has given out, well, they are ambitious, but their feasibility on the ground is debatable. His campaign estimates the annual cost at about $10 billion, roughly 9% of NYC's $116 billion budget. Remember, this is covered by $9 billion in new revenue, plus $1 billion from efficiency reforms like better contract auditing. However, analysis suggests that the cost could balloon up to $112 billion over a decade. So again, questioning whether the reforms that he has been promising throughout his election campaign, are they feasible, are they implementable on ground or not? So in fact, Mamdani's appeal here appears to be cutting across whites and South Asian voters in New York. In June, you see Mamdani scored an upset victory in New York's Democratic mayoral primary. In fact, data suggests that he received significant backing from white voters apart from Asians. In fact, while most South Asian voters recognize the significance of having one of their own in office, they say that they care much more about what he can deliver rather than about his identity. Now, Mamdani's staunch criticism of Israel conduct in Gaza has been yet another galvanizing force in his electorate at a time when majority of Democratic Party's voters say that they sympathize more with Palestinians than Israel. So certainly, this is also going to be a factor that influences voting in this election. Now, his popularity is despite his alleged Hindu-phobic views and controversial remarks. He's criticized, in fact, Mayor Adams for his proximity with Prime Minister Modi. Hindu bodies in the US describe Mamdani as Hindu-phobic. And if you look at his statements, in 2020, Mamdani attended a rally where organizers used anti-Hindu slurs. In fact, he also criticized the construction of Ram Mandir in Ayodhya. So clearly, there is a lot of criticism, backlash coming in from the Hindu community in New York as well when it comes to his statements. But that is the overall of what we are seeing right now as far as the New York elections are concerned.